Good afternoon. My name is Barnabas Mwansa. I'm a PhD candidate in the School of Management. I'm looking at the role of technology in sustainable development goals in Africa. So I did a review of articles that, peer-reviewed articles that look at the role of technology in sustainable development, with particularly focus on information technology, and so that's what I looked at. So my paper, in terms of structure of the paper, I'll look at introduction, methodology, definition of concepts, and the role and impact of ICT and sustainable development goals. Then I also look at discussion and conclusions. Yeah, just to begin with, there's been a great recognition that utilization of information and communication technology is at the center of sustainable development goals. And technology, obviously, we all agree that it plays a critical role in transforming societies and economic growth through enhancing efficiency, connectivity, and access to resources and services. Sustainable development goals require enhancing information and communication technology. However, the challenge remains in Africa in terms of enhancing information and communication technologies, and we see as we go in terms of what the challenges are for African countries. So while Africa has made great strides in adopting information and technology communication in its quest to advance development, challenges still remain in many areas. So recognizing the role of information and communication technology in Africa to achieve sustainable development goals, this paper attempts to review existing articles on the role of information and communication technology in sustainable development goals in Africa. The paper does not analyze the impact of sustainable development goals, but rather endeavors to highlight the role of information and communication technology in achieving sustainable development goals. In discussing, firstly, I look at the methodology that we use to examine the role of information technology in sustainable development goals. And then I present in detail the key concepts and how that relates to sustainable development goals. With regard to methodology, the paper conducted a review of article published on the role of technology in sustainable development goals by undertaking a search of keywords in scholarly database and internet sources. The article reviewed were undertaken in three specific areas. One, the role of ICT in sustainable development goals in Africa and developing countries. How can Africa enhance technology to achieve sustainable development goals? And debates around ICT in youth employment, financial inclusion, and healthcare. So I looked broadly at three areas to be more specific and focused in terms of what ICT can contribute to sustainable development goals. And in this regard, I looked at youth employment, financial inclusion, and healthcare systems. So the paper published case studies on the role of sustainable development goals based on NGO reports and international development agencies. It should be noted that while the review articles summarizing the review in the literature on the topic outlined above does not provide exhaustive representation of literature on each topic, rather prominent, widely cited, and insightful literature was selected to inform the wider research. The rationale for the selection of article for inclusion in the review was those with interest in the subject area with regard to the role of information and communication technology to sustainable development goals in the context of Africa. Articles related to concept and definitions were limited to those with particular citation and regularly noted as prominent piece within that field. Articles written covered similar narratives, lines of arguments as included, as well as articles aiming at adding new insights and value to the review and the research findings. And so in terms of looking at ICT broadly and its definition and the concept around it and what this paper primarily tried to achieve, we looked at the article which was written by Aru and Chigoi when they cited Hendricks in defining ICT, and they define ICT as generic terms referring to technology that is used for collecting, storing, editing, and passing on communication information in various forms. French further defines information and communication technology as broad-based technology, including methods, management, applications that support the creation, storage, manipulation, and communication of information. The OECD referred to information and communication technology as full range of technological and techniques used to manage information and knowledge. In this regard, this paper considers ICT as a platform to exchange data, information, knowledge, and tools to implement application, i.e. e-commerce, e-school, and e-health. And basically that's what we'll be looking at in terms of how that contributes to sustainable development goals. Now, just a bit of background. There has been a lot of development in the development sector in terms of how do we then address the issue of poverty. So the new Sustainable Development Goals that succeeded the Millennium Development Goals focuses on what contribution can be done with regard to poverty. So in this part of the research, we're looking at the role and impact of ICT in contributing to Sustainable Development Goals. We basically ask a question: why are ICT essential for the achievement of Sustainable Development Goals? What are the main opportunities for ICT to accelerate progress and maximize the transformation change needed, as well as the challenges linked to access and connectivity for all? As we know, the background to this is that in September 2015, leaders from all over the world gathered in New York to agree on the Sustainable Development Goals. And those goals have about 17 goals aiming to end poverty, extreme hunger, ensure quality education for everyone, improve health care and gender inequality, protect, restore, and promote sustainable use of ecosystem, and to improve social and economic development and inequalities. And obviously, we know Geoffrey Sachs has been also very well influential in the architect of Sustainable Development Goals. But here he argues that ICT will play a critical role in enabling the achievement of Sustainable Development Goals. And so what we want to see is that what role will then ICT play in achieving Sustainable Development Goals. A number of papers did mention and comment on this issue in terms of the role of ICT. Hoffman and Graven noted that evidence by developments from other countries that ICT as a sector can contribute immensely to Sustainable Development Goals. Amit and Safa noted that ICT can help build synergies among the goals, realizing possible multiple benefits, as well as avoid barriers and conflicts on the challenges road to Sustainable Development Goals. There is a report by ICT and Sustainable Development Goal report that comments that ICT has immense potential to speed up and scale or increase the rate of diffusion or a very wide range of cutting-edge technologies, applications, and platforms across the economy, helping low-income countries to leapfrog to achieve key development milestones while contributing to economic growth. Significantly, it can also be dramatically reduce the cost of service delivery. And primarily, they focused on the number of issues that they point that makes ICT critical to Sustainable Development Goals. The report further points that ICT will take key in accelerating achievement of Sustainable Development Goals in Africa in the following 5 areas. 1, accelerating upscaling of critical services in health, education, financial services, smart agriculture, and low carbon emission systems. Reduced deployment costs addressing urban and rural realities, enhanced public awareness and management, innovation, connectivity, productivity, and efficiency across many sectors, fast upgrading in the quality of services. Now, we look at what then is the impact of ICT on Sustainable Development Goals. According to Grid and Marshall, ICT are critically important for Sustainable Development Goals in developing countries and in Africa particularly. ICT for Development report points out ICT is and will continue to be a catalyst in advancing development goals. The report argues that new information and communication technology overcome the barrier of distance and time and significantly improve the accessibility of information and knowledge, and can be seen already from this discussion that we are having, that we are now in a classroom and we're able to interact and share knowledge and be able to improve the way we look at development outcomes. And so I argue that as a result of the sharing of information and knowledge quickly, the effectiveness becomes feasible and act as a key element in achieving Sustainable Development Goals. Now, with regard to Africa, particularly focusing on what role will then ICT play or with regard to Africa. First of all, we need to recognize Africa's utilization of ICT.
Yeah, Barnabas, you have another 2 more minutes to get.
All right, okay. So I'll be very... All right, sure. Thank you. Yeah, so with regard to utilization of Africa, Africa still has a challenge in terms of utilization of ICT, as you can see on that table. With regard to fixed telephone subscription, it's very low, around below 10%. Mobile cellular telephone subscription has increased, it's very high, about 70%. But when you look at fixed broadband subscription, household with computers, household with internet access at home, and individuals using the internet, that's all below about 20%. So this poses a new challenge with regard to how can then ICT support employment creation. There is a challenge that in Africa, about 2 million people between the age of 15 and 24 are out of employment, and these are young people that will be looking for employment. Now, the Africa Development Bank argues that if young youth unemployment rates remain unchanged in Africa, nearly 50% of youth, excluding students, will be unemployed, discouraged, or economically inactive. So the bank argues that likely consequences of this include increased poverty, social and economic inclusion, migration out of the continent, and increased risks of political tension. It is therefore goes obvious that there is need to invest in ICT to improve employment opportunities. The papers that I looked at, Muhammad, for example, indicate the ICT sector was boosting the federal government of Nigeria in job creation on an average of about 12 million jobs from 2012 to date, which is a significant improvement against 2.5 million jobs in that sector created. Muhammad further also pointed out that the World Bank has a program that they are supporting in Nigeria of about $2 million investment on facilities to promote growth and employment among young people in Nigeria. ICTU points out access to information means better access to capital, markets, and job opportunities and training. For example, the World Bank states that ICT connects youth to jobs, outlining employment markets, are helping an estimated of 12 million people worldwide find work by connecting them with employment opportunities. So further, other papers show a number of employment opportunities for young people. For example, ICT-based businesses such as document processing centers, cyber cafe, computer training centers, computer services and repairs, hardware services and repairs, internet programming, cable and satellite TV. These are some of the opportunities that exist where young people can find employment. There is a challenge, however, that has been noted in most of the papers that I reviewed, that one, connectivity remains a challenge. So the mobile platform is emerging as a single most powerful way to extend economic opportunities. However, in terms of young people accessing many young people in developing countries, that is not always the case in terms of them accessing technology or even having access to internet or indeed having computers. So that remains a challenge. The other area where we see potential and indeed great opportunities for ITC to contribute is in the area of financial inclusion. And financial inclusion has a role to play in terms of poverty reduction. 3D argues that poverty can now in part be redefined as lack of access to reliable, affordable financial services that enable people to build economic security and improve their lives. He points out that while there are about 3 million economically active individuals in sub-Saharan Africa, only about 20 million of them, less than 10%, have access to the kind of formal financial services. So if people do not have access to financial services, and practically that impacts in terms of their poverty. And if indeed sustainable development goals have to address poverty issues, then it means we've got to invest. So the papers that I looked at reviewed the opportunities that is there in terms of improving access to financial services. According to Beck, financial services permit individuals and households to manage the risks and uncertainty, to save on better terms, to invest in business ventures.
Mr. Barnabas.
Now, what will be the role of IT? It has been noted that mobile technology subscription allow expansion and access to financial services previous young people. I'm now concluding. So in conclusion, what this paper has highlighted is that ICT plays a critical role in terms of sustainable development goals. So it is important for Africa for technology can be used through commerce to generate money and capital. There is
Mr.
some
Barnabas?
recommendation that I'm making here. The adoption of IoT.
Your time is up, Barnabas. Thank you so much for your presentation.